Chuck, learned two things today. One of them an age-old question.
What's that?
Why did the chicken cross the road?
Why?
So we've got a chicken. I asked him today, and he said that his great grandfather, Mr. McNugget, crossed the road to get bourbon. Second thing I learned, I probably need to stop day drinking.
Would probably be a good idea.
So thanks for tuning back into the bourbon market. And if you haven't downloaded our app, you need to go download it right now. It's available in Apple and Google Play. But the reason I'm telling you to do that is, well, because it's our app and it's incredible. But the other thing is I had a guy who had downloaded the app and he messaged me today and asked me a good question. He's new to bourbon, doesn't really have a whole lot of people he knows who drink bourbon, and doesn't really know anything about bourbon. He knows that he really likes what he's tasted thus far, but he asked me what were some good bourbons for a beginner to start with to kind of build your collection, if you will, or go ahead and start your cabinet. So, you and I were talking about it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so, you and I were talking about it, Chuck, and we said, we're going to make him a video.
Yeah.
And we're going to kind of to tell you, our opinion. And again, it's just our opinion. So, take it for what you will. But this is our opinion on bourbons to start with. We're going to kind of go over just a quick overview of 5, and then we're going to throw a few more in there at the end that we're really not going to talk about, but just tell you about. So you want to go ahead and start with your first one?
Yeah, the first one I have is this, which is Wild Turkey 101. Wild Turkey 101 is an absolute standard in any cabinet. Some people enjoy drinking it on the rocks or neat. Some people use it for mixers for old fashions or you could do a highball if that's even a mixer. But it's a standard pour. I say that because it's at a great price point. It's over 100 proof, so it's got plenty of flavor. And it's always been one of my favorites ever since I've really started drinking bourbon 20 something years ago. So it's always there. I have moved on to other things, as most people do. Once you've been drinking this stuff long enough, you kind of find your way around to other things. But that is definitely something I keep in my cabinet. And when somebody comes to my house who wants to try something for the first time, that is something I make them try. Because it's definitely a good starter for something that's over 100 proof. And at the price point that it's at, which for that bottle is $25 basically, is what you're going to hit at. You can't really ask for a better price point. It's not going to break the bank, and it's something that you can go out and find that's usually readily available in most places. So,
yeah, very good first bourbon to start the list with. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to go with my first one, and that's just Four Roses small batch. And so, this is a 90 proof bourbon. It's not that 101 proof that yours is. But a 90 proof bourbon, very, very good flavor profile on this, good nose on it. This is something, Four Roses, you really can't go wrong with them.
They don't make a bad bourbon.
And so pulling it up here in the app, $24.99 MSRP. If you walk into a liquor store and this isn't on the shelf, you need to turn around and walk back out, because that store is closed and has been for years, and you need to get out of the building before you're trespassing. Yeah. So, just one that you need to keep in the cabinet. It's a good, like you said, mixer, things like that, but it's also a good bourbon with flavors. a good flavor profile that someone's going to enjoy no matter kind of what level they're at. I mean, we've been drinking bourbon for 20 plus years, and this is still one that if I don't want anything extremely, I'll pour a glass.
Yep. It's a great pick. Great first pick. Next, I have, we'll go with the small batches now. Elijah Craig small batch. Also comes in at it's just a very, very good bourbon for the price point that it is, which is around $33, $33. You can't beat it. It's 94 proof. So it's not going to be overly strong for someone who just started. It's going to have a lot of flavor. The nose on it is exceptional.
Yes.
It's more of a sweeter. It's on the sweeter end as far as bourbons go, but it's also one that I keep for people to try, especially if they're new. Cause just like the 101, like we've said in previous episodes, a lot of people can't handle that off the beginning, at the very beginning. Yeah. So if they hate that just because of the burn or whatever, Elijah Craig is or the Four Roses is a great throwback as far as to something that's a little bit lighter, but it still has plenty of flavor. And then, of course, the price point, you absolutely cannot beat it. And Elijah Craig small batch is almost at I've never been to a liquor store yet that doesn't have it. And if they don't have it, along the same lines as what Doug just said, they might not be open, or you could be delusional of where you're at. I don't know.
You may not be in a liquor store.
Yeah, because they most places usually have it. I mean, it's rare you'll ever go in somewhere that they do not have it. But that would be my second choice as far as something to start with, especially for a collection, because you can also use that in old fashions as well. I've used pretty much everything that I've picked. I've used for an old fashioned at one point or another. But none of these straight up are what I use for bourbon and cokes, but like for a true cocktail, yes. I've got one out here that I'm going to show later that I use for bourbon and coke. If you ask for bourbon and coke at my house, this is all you're going to get. Everything else is above that. So,
yeah. So that's going to my next pick, and you saw me on the phone. I wasn't ignoring Chuck. What I was doing is I was actually in our app, the Bourbon Market, and I was looking up the MSRP on this next pick. And okay, so here's the thing. $17.92 small batch. I put it in here because this is a favorite amongst a lot of people. It's something that I keep in the cabinet because if I've got someone that's come over to the house that isn't really, they're just getting into bourbon, very good bourbon for them because it has that sweetness. It does have a lot of flavor. The nose isn't as good as some of these others that we're talking about, but at, let's see, $29.99 is MSRP. You can usually find this a little bit less than MSRP around here anyway.
Yeah.
But a very good bourbon for the money. It's something that most people are going to enjoy. It is 93.7 proof. And so, it's still not up there. It's above that 90. So you're kind of working your way up. But like I said, not my favorite just because it is so sweet.
Okay, so I think we're going to be on the same page here on the next one. It's Buffalo Trace.
Absolutely.
Buffalo Trace.
You can tell what kind of page I'm on. So.
Yeah, whatever page you were on chasing that chicken earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
But Buffalo Trace has got to be. I put it in there as a standard because it's a great wheated bourbon. It is. It's 90 proof. It's very smooth, especially at the price point that it's at, which is right around 25 on average.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people. If you follow any bourbon societies on Facebook, there are people who buy this as low as $19.99. Which is crazy low for how good it is.
Yeah.
because there are other things in that price point that don't even come near it. Um, but it is one of the, I will let people also do cocktails and stuff with that one, or if they want on the rocks or neat. But that's, it's a great starter bourbon. For your collection. Almost everybody knows it. It's a name that everybody knows. So if they see it, it's something that they can kind of, they'll probably kind of gravitate to. It's one of those type bourbons. But that's why I chose it. How about you, Doug?
Yeah, so I think it's like you said, it's a great wheated bourbon. It's a bourbon that everyone knows. It's a bourbon. The bottle is extremely recognizable, and you were talking about neat. That's what I started out with tonight, just because I picked this bottle up and it had basically 2 ounces left in it.
Yeah.
I don't just keep empty Buffalo Trace bottles sitting around, but so a great wheated bourbon. It's a bourbon with good flavor. I'm not going to say it's overly complex by any means, but a good bourbon, easy drinking bourbon, and like you said, it has the name, so people want to try it.
Yeah.
It makes a good centerpiece, especially if you're just starting a collection. It makes a good centerpiece in your collection.
Yeah.
Now that being said, it is Buffalo Trace, and so it is allocated to some degree in different areas. So here in South Carolina, that bottle, I've seen it for as high as $69.99. On the West Coast, we've seen it as high as like $80-$90.
Yeah.
But here it usually sells for a lot of places you can still buy it at retail, but a lot of places will charge $32-$33 for it.
Yeah.
Still, even at that price, it's
Still,
a good one to go ahead and put it in your cabinet.
Yeah, still a good pickup at that price. Even though, I mean, that's a liquor store doing a markup, but that's a reasonable, what I consider a reasonable markup. I mean, considering what they do to other things, that one that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's a little more available here. In Tennessee, especially if you know your area well and you've made your rounds to different stores, you kind of get. I mean, anybody who's been anywhere that's lived anywhere long enough, you should be able to pick up on when they get stuff in, or you know what to follow when they do announcements, all that stuff. So I've got that stuff coming to me, especially for announcements for Buffalo Trace and things of that nature. So I know when it's coming in, and I usually I'm 2 miles from the main store that I shop at. So if they ever announce anything, I can be there in 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. So it's to get what I need. But it is very limited quantities. Everything is usually 1 bottle per person, at the maximum 2 bottles per person. A lot of times, if you're lucky, it can be 3, but most times it's 1 or 2. But one's better than none. So
absolutely. And the other thing is if you're using the app, if you're using the Bourbon Market, you're going to see things like that, and you're going to see exactly what people are paying for it. And, you see it, hey, I need to run to that store and get that bottle.
Yeah.
So now we've got a few more. I know that you've got some sitting over there that we were just going to touch on very, very briefly. And we talked about them before, but if you want to go, I didn't grab any of them.
The first two I'm going to mention are readily available. I do want to put these out here because I don't want people thinking, well, they're just showing stuff that's allocated that you can't find. But this is Old Forester 100 proof. This is a $25 bottle that tastes amazing. You could do a lot of stuff. Very good bourbon for the price point that it's at. I tell everybody that I know to buy that bourbon. It's one of the first ones you should have. Or if it's just a hole in your collection that you've never thought about buying because maybe you thought that it wasn't up to snuff, it's very good. And we've said this before. There are plenty of things in that price range that people pass up every day that will sometimes beat out something that costs $50. And until you try these things, or you watch enough podcasts, or you do you follow enough people to understand the whole concept of it, or you just try enough things, you're not going
Yep.
to know that. But that is definitely one that I would put in there just because of the flavor profile. It fits me. I love Old Forester pretty much everything that they make.
Yeah.
It's Old Forester and Four Roses. I mean, there's really not anything bad. It's just a
No.
matter of different things and what you would use it for. So
Yeah. So what's your next one over there? Because like I said, we talked about stuff. I didn't grab anything off the wall back here.
I'll do I'll do this one briefly, and then I'll go into the one that's kind of it is what me and you consider a normal bourbon, but it's hard to find.
Yeah.
So this is, of course, this is the 175 bottle. Um, this is my go-to. Okay, in my cabinet. If you want someone that has wants a bourbon and Coke, or some people just love this on the rocks and neat. It just depends on the person.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for a mixer, this is what you use. This is
Yeah.
insanely cheap for what you get for it. This is $18 for a 750 and 25 for this for a half
Yeah.
gallon.
And bottled in bond, so it's 100 proof.
Yeah.
Extremely good bourbon. I knew that's what you were talking about when you said the bourbon and Coke. And so I have to agree. It's extremely, and for the price point, incredible.
Yeah.
You can't get much better.
No.
In that price range.
And it's easy. So if you needed something for a group gathering where you knew a lot of people were going to, especially they're going to drink bourbon and Cokes, it's just because you just know your audience and they're all going to come over and ask for stuff like that. Keep that. It's not going to break the bank. You can buy, depending on how big of a group you're entertaining, you can buy 2 to 3 of them and you spent $50.
Yeah,
it's not, exactly. I mean, that's relatively cheap compared to a lot of other things you could be serving to people. But that's my 2 readily available ones. This next one is not.
Hold on.
Okay.
I think I know what you're going with. Okay, you ready?
Yeah. Oh, he knows me so well. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, couldn't agree more. Now it is, and here's what's going to happen. People who are just starting are going to say, because it's like a $40-ish.
Its MSRP's right at 32.
32, 34, somewhere around there. Incredible. 10-year.
Yeah.
A 10-year bourbon, you're not going to find, I mean, if you can find, especially at retail.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and tell them about it, man.
Well,
that's one that
it's not it's 90 proof. But for a 10-year bourbon at that price point, it's hard. It's very, very few and far between you're ever going to find those. But it is allocated. So that's the thing. People say, well, you're saying it's $32 or whatever, $35. I'm seeing people list it for 75 to 80. Well, it's because it's allocated. And depending on where you're at in the United States, especially, there are people who list this at MSRP and there's people who list this for $80. But that's where using our app, we'll tell you about it over and over and over again. That's where using our app will steer you at least in the right direction of who's carrying what and what price they're selling it at. Because in general, people have never known that information. You haven't even had a comparison to use, which is why we did the app to begin with.
Absolutely.
But this is a major reason why, is because this is one of the most sought after bourbons in the United States that people just want to go after. I can't say, to be completely honest with you, I can't say that it's even in my top 5 anymore, but I will tell you it's a good bourbon. But it's not one that I've had this bottle right here for over a year, because it's not one that I generally go through. It's one I can say I have in my collection and I move on,
and it's one that people see the bottle again. It's kind of like that Buffalo Trace. They want to try it.
Yeah.
And And so here's the thing, going back to the app, if you see someone has bought a bottle of Eagle Rare at 32, 34, $35, even at $40, what you do is, first off, you go to that store and see if they have any more. But even if they don't have any more, what you do is you make a note of that, because you know that store sells it at retail or close to retail.
Yeah.
And that's what the app does, is it shows you those stores that are actually selling the bourbons at the correct price, or at least close to it, and aren't gouging people.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it goes back to what we've said, be patient. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to build your cabinet overnight.
No.
Wait on it and buy it at retail, because it's not an $80 bottle. It's not anywhere close to an $80 bottle.
And along those lines, Doug, so me and you both have our own collections. Yours is about how big now?
I don't.
I mean, it's
probably 60, 60, 65 bottles.
And I'm right, either right under or right over 100. But it's taken me personally, it's taken 3 years to get to this point. It does not happen overnight. You can't do it overnight. If you do, you'll go broke.
Absolutely.
You just do things as they come along, and as you can afford them, and that's different for everybody. It's not, and I don't do this stuff to impress other people. I do this because this is what I love. It's definitely a hobby for me. But it's something I love to drink. So if it's something you're really into, like, and you want to get started, then, take the time to do the research, not just with what you like and trying different things, but who carries what and when. It makes a difference. It's taken me this full 3 years to know the entire area of where I'm at. And I still don't know everything. I just know the certain people that I can go to, and I know kind of what they carry and stuff like that. So if somebody's out of one thing, I can go somewhere else and probably find it. And I only go to places that actually, like Doug said, have things within that $10 range of MSRP. I don't even mess with people who are going to price gouge. If you're going to do that, you're not getting my business.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. And, like I said, it's not about trying to impress people for me. 90% of bourbon collectors would be completely unimpressed with my collection, but I like what I have, and, continue to grow that collection, and continue to look for stuff that I want. I don't look for stuff just because everybody's chasing it. But it goes back to what we've said over and over and over. Get to know the managers, the owners, the employees of these liquor stores, because if they see you coming in and you're buying different stuff, and you're not always just going in and asking for allocated stuff and then walking out the door, they will usually take care of you.
Yeah.
And, so get to know people. Start building your collection. You don't have to start with $100, $150 bottles. Start with, we showed you bottles that range from, at retail, we didn't go over $35. I don't know.
I mean, everything that I mentioned. So I went through 6 on my side. You can get all of them for $150, right at it, 160.
Yeah. So. And that's adding six bottles to your collection. You can get everything that we've talked about here, you can put in your collection for less than $200, or right around $200 at retail. So, and you've got, 8 or 9 bottles in your collection. Nice little collection to start. It's going to be good bourbon. Just don't drink bad bourbon, people.